How plastic will cause our extinction. Honestly, I don't think we talk about this nearly as much as we should.
If I told you that the human race would go extinct because of climate change, you would
No.
believe me. If I told you that we would go extinct because of overpopulation, you might believe me.
No.
But if I told you that simple plastics could cause our whole race to go extinct, you would look at me as if I was some crazy conspiracy theorist. How in hell?
I honestly think there's a lot of people who do think that plastic is extremely harmful for a lot of different reasons, and that it is literally slowly, completely poisoning us.
How could this simple thing cause our downfall? How could this thing that is literally everywhere help kill us all? This is not something that's going to kill us all like a meteor crashing on the earth. It's not something external, but this will happen internally, and no one will realize it, and when people will realize, it's going to be too late. Something that seems so insignificant and so unimportant can actually have much bigger consequences on the human.
I think people already realize it, and I think scientists already even potentially realize it, but the reality is the plastic industry is probably way bigger than any other industry in the world.
Race than ever thought possible. Plastics have huge indirect consequences on humans, and the first time people realized it was during a study done on fish.
I maybe even know about this. Huh.
A study done in 2015 has shown the dark side plastics, and more specifically BPAs and EE2s, can have on the human race. Scientists put Japanese fish called Medaka in the fish tank during their embryonic development phase. They did something special with this fish tank, which was that they infected its water with hyper-concentrated amount of BPAs to see how it would impact the fish in their later life stages, compared to another fish group that was put in clean water. These fish stayed in that water for 7 days, and what they concluded from the experiment is this: nothing. Nothing had happened to the fish. Well, what's the point of the study then if nothing happens? The consequences appeared later on. No special mutation happened, no weird changes happened to them, but when the fish had kids, the scientists realized that they had 50% less babies than they should have compared to the clean water group. This generation of fish that was
that's already a very scary correlation to the declining number of birth rates, sperm counts, and fertility.
Exposed to this hyper-concentrated amount of VPAs didn't experience any real external issues, but half of them became infertile. The study kept going, and the next generation of the same fish were almost 100% infertile, without being exposed to the BPA. The study had to stop after this, but 3 generations were sufficient to get the species extinct. What they did was repeat this experiment with EE2s. A moderate amount of this chemical was put in the fish tank.
So, these chemicals he's talking about, by the way, are, if I'm not, I could be mistaken, but as much as I can remember, these are like core ingredients of plastic. Like, you know, if you see plastic, if you see any of that, it has a lot of them.
Compared to the hyper-concentrated amount of BPAs, what they realized was that it led to about the same results. These fish would have been extinct if they didn't stop the experiment. Now this can lead to a question about how much this also affects us, because it's not big news that we're constantly exposed to chemicals like these. How much do they actually impact the human race too, compared to the Japanese fish?
Oof. My bet is that China is gonna be the first one to go with this. I have already said this before, but China's air is literally toxic. China's water, groundwater supplies, and all the water that they drink is toxic. China's, well, rain is literally acidic almost at this point. And they eat fake food that's literally made out of plastic. And it's a giant market there, by the way, that actually rivals legit industries. They eat refined sewer fat that is remade into cooking oil, which, by the way, just boosts cancer, and that's roughly 1/3 of the oil that they use in that country. I think in 50 years, they're gonna be mutants at this rate. An ad? Oh my. I thought it's a bug.
Gillette ProGlide reaģē uz kontūrām nepārspējami tuvam skumam.
Yo, where did my YouTube Premium go?
Plastics appeared in 1907 as a combination of 2 chemicals called formaldehyde and phenol, which would then be named Bakelite. These were cheap and could be easily mass-produced. This is when we first saw the appearance of Perma camera, the GPO telephone, and the Echo AD36 radio, which then went on to become iconic 20th century products. Later they realized they could use this plastic to conserve preserve and transport food much more easily, and slowly we started to see an exponential rise in plastic use in the world.
Yep,
The production
food.
increased, the use of them increased, but this also led to a huge pollution problem we have nowadays. This is something everyone had been aware of in the past decade.
For those people who say, by the way, there's nothing wrong with plastic, man, you cannot find a single person in this world who's gonna say that a Coca-Cola in a plastic bottle does taste the exact same, for example, as a Coca-Cola in a glass bottle. It's completely different.
Decade, but whoever thought about the impact it had on our fertility. The BPAs used in the study are everywhere. Plastics, food, water, soil, air, and many more.
Yep.
The amount of this chemical
Yep.
is astonishing, and even though companies produce
Scary.
BPA-free plastic bottles, they still contain chemicals that are bad for us, and sometimes even worse. Every time a company has to delete an ingredient from a product, it has to replace that ingredient to make it usable. The only real benefit it brings is that people believe it's good and it calms them down. This is mostly done with food. Whenever the fat is removed from a product to make it fat-free or low-fat, it tastes disgusting, which is why
Yes.
they have to replace the fat with something else. This usually comes in the form of added sugars and other chemicals, which in most cases makes the food even more unhealthy, but the simple sign that says low-fat reassures people even if the product is worse in the end. People believe it's good and so they're happy.
People also have actually learned about the fact that, fat doesn't actually make you fat, as stupid as honestly that says. A lot of people because this is something a lot of grandparents actually were talking about. For example, my grandma and granddad, they were constantly talking about how their meals when they were young literally consisted of actual raw fat and just bread. Which nowadays would be, the equivalent of you literally gaining 100% of your body weight extra in a so low amount of time. But for them, it didn't actually do anything, strangely enough, huh?
This same method is applied to plastic bottles. They remove the BPAs to make people happy but add other chemicals that are usually worse than the previous one. BPAs have been
Classic
found in hyper
moves.
amounts on receipts, for example, which most people keep close to them in their wallet. They're also very present on plastic, and not only plastic bottles but also your keyboard, mouse, phone case, controller,
Everything.
water bottle, computer, and the list goes on and on. Everything around us is made out of plastic, and these chemicals are on all of them. Every plastic contains chemical particles that can cause a generation of kids to be infertile, and we already might be infertile without knowing it. Same goes for EE2s. These chemicals are found in oral contraceptive pills for women. Birth control pills contain these chemicals.
Anyone remember, being infertile, by the way, is a completely modern thing, by the way. No one in the 70s, 80s, or 90s even talked about infertility as like an actual thing, It was rare for at that time for that to be the case. But nowadays, man, that's some scary stuff right there.
Chemical which is causing women to be infertile, and yet millions of women are taking it without question. The human mind is very simple. It thinks mostly about what feels good right now. It thinks about what is pleasurable
True.
right now, and the short-term benefits birth control gives you is amazing. Eliminating the risk of pregnancy is a great short-term benefit, but few actually consider the impact it could have on the future, because our minds are so focused on what
People are also talking about this recently a lot, yeah, because there are a lot of negative possibilities here that people are now contemplating. Well, nothing is concrete just yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if this had some really negative consequence, because you are literally tricking your organism artificially thinking that something is happening, which is kind of wild if you think about it.
feels good right now is also the reason why we have so many problems with addictions. Whether it's social media, video games, or smoking, they all give us that short-term dopamine hit we crave, without considering the health issues they will cause later down the line. What happens to women who take this pill is this. A higher concentration of EE2s than which was used in the study is ejected into the water every time they pee. The dose of EE2 used in the study was...
Oh, this is this thing. I have heard about this. At first, this was like Alex Jones level of insanity, but now people are slowly actually agreeing with this stuff.
Moderate one compared to the higher dose of the ones found in water waste. These are chemicals so small that they can't get filtered through our cleaning processes.
All of this is 100% proved, by the way. The verified peer-reviewed studies.
which means we take them in on a daily basis. Our water is infected with these, and even though it's a small dose, it's still something we have to consume every day. EE2 then also works by suppressing ovulation. This is because the suppression of ovulation can lead to a decrease in number of quality eggs available for fertilization. This may seem very far into the future for some people, but there's something else that affects us right now.
Part 3. Destruction of hormones.
These two chemicals, besides having very negative effects on fertility, also
I mean, do you think you're born a soy boy or are you made into a soy boy?
affect something closer to the heart of man, which is testosterone levels. These chemicals are known to be endocrine disruptors or can have an estrogenic effect, which essentially means that they will interfere with the body's hormones and hormone production, including
Yep. I'm pretty sure you have heard about that also. Testosterone levels are literally in the toilet.
testosterone. BPA has been found to have an estrogenic-like effect on the body, which means that it can mimic the action of the female hormone estrogen. When BPA binds to estrogen receptors in the body, it can disrupt the normal
Is this the Last of Us soundtrack?
functioning of the endocrine system and affect testosterone production. This can lead to lower testosterone levels in male, which can have a range of effects on their health, including reduced muscle mass, decreased bone density, and lower sex drive.
Yep.
Exposure to BPA has also been linked to reproductive issues in both males and females, including
Obviously.
reduced fertility, abnormal sperm production, and changes in menstrual cycles. And EE2s have a similar effect
Oh, also, I really doubt that he's going to talk about it, but artificial pregnancy currently is also kind of on the rise and it's a thing. Well, artificial impregnation is not really the best thing in the world. And it's probably going to lead to some very, very, very scary outcomes if it done en masse. Because here's the thing about artificial pregnancy that we now know that we didn't know a while back. And that is the fact that it's actually not the first sperm that gets to the egg that actually wins. The egg literally can deny access to sperm that is incompatible, genetically bad for it. But now, if you're doing the artificial thing, well, you're not exactly giving it that choice. So maybe you're artificially impregnating with something that the egg would never have chose on its own because it's a bad match for some reason. And maybe these bad matches are only going to be seeable after like a generation. For example, this is going to be a problem for your kids because we don't understand these things. Our bodies are capable of discerning things that are not bad for us now, but bad for us in 20 years, or bad for the future generations. Man, we are absolutely destroying ourselves. This is some scary stuff.
just like BPAs affect testosterone. EE2 is known to have the potential to affect testosterone levels in the body. It works by suppressing the release of certain hormones from the brain, including FSH and LH, which are hormones responsible for stimulating the production of testosterone in the testes. Therefore, by suppressing FSH and LH, EE2 can lower testosterone levels in the body. In fact, some studies have shown that long-term use of EE2 containing oral contraceptives may lead to decrease in testosterone levels in some women, which is also crucial for women. As
Makes
these chemicals
sense.
that we can find in everyday products like plastics, which are everywhere around us, food, water, air, and many more, can disrupt our hormones, this means that they also have an effect on fertility in males by decreasing testosterone. Testosterone is a hormone that is important for the development and maintenance of male reproductive tissues, including the testes and the prostate gland. Testosterone also plays a role in the production of sperm. When testosterone levels are low, it can lead to a decrease in sperm production and quality, which can result in infertility. Low testosterone levels can then also lead to decrease in libido, which can make it difficult to conceive a child. With all that said, we can wonder how this will change the future of our
Libido, essentially, he just means impotence, which is also on the rise. This is insane.
world.
This is so.
Cik skaisti
Wow.
viss atver.
Wow, are we for real, YouTube? Why haven't you taken my money and where's my YouTube Premium? So I probably should actually look into it because there's money on my credit card. So why is YouTube not taking my money? I don't know.
These things become more and more used. We also saw other negative sides. The increased pollution, the animals suffering from it, and other environments problem. And as people became more aware of those problems, we started to see the rise of movements to avoid this from growing even further. This then meant we tried to reduce our plastic problems, but it's still massively used in our world because it's so cheap and easy to make. Plastics are
The question is it not actually already too late? Because it's everywhere. I don't think you. It's hard to get it's hard to find soil where you will not find plastic under a microscope. When he was talking about the fish study, I thought he's talking about the study that literally was looking at fish and examining them for microplastic. And guess what? Every fish in every ocean and every river is full of fucking plastic.
everywhere around us, and it's almost impossible to avoid them. The first generation to be really exposed with this were baby boomers and Gen X, which were our parents and for some even grandparents. Since they got exposed to plastics, BPAs and EE2s, it might actually be the case that we already have signs of infertility. In fact, about 15 to 20% of the world population is already infertile, whether it's in developed countries or
Well, at least Bill Gates is happy about that.
developing countries. This would mean that if our parents have been exposed to these chemicals and that now 20% of the world population is infertile, this would mean that if we keep going with this trend and that if the fish study also exactly
It's gonna just get worse. Yeah, this means that we're gonna be completely done out in like 5 generations.
applies to humans, then about 50% of our kids would be infertile. This would go on from generation to generation until no one is still fertile and we end up with an elite group of people that control the last few people that are still fertile. This elite group would have control over this extreme value that they have to the human race. We can't produce kids through science, and this would become the only way.
Man, that's some crazy stuff right there. And the worst part is, it's completely on point. I wonder what's gonna happen. Is the world gonna end in like 10 years? Because we're not getting rid of plastic. The plastic industry is beyond huge. Like, you know? And the worst part is, because of hippies and all of that garbage, people who are literally brain damaged, you can't get rid of this. For example, there was a time when no country in the world wanted to use plastic bags. They wanted to use bags made out of wood. You know, the hippies came in and started yelling, "No, you stop killing the trees, man!" And then everyone just caved, and they said, "Yeah, okay, well, plastic it is then." And that's, by the way, the real story how that happened. We could have been using organic wood-based, paper bags all this time. But because of hippies, we use plastic bags, which is horrible, as you can probably already tell, in more ways than one. This is absolutely insane. Anyway, like, subscribe, comment down below, and wow, what a time to be alive, huh?